Alright, I'm back with the next DIY project, and that is to replace our kitchen countertops and install Backsplash. Alright, just a quick disclaimer for this video because the project I did in our kitchen between Backsplash, countertop, and sink installation, there's a lot of content, so I'm going to split it up into two. So this video is strictly just the Backsplash installation and the trim work. So you're going to see in this video an old countertop and then magically a new countertop without any context, because I started the Backsplash install and then replaced the countertops and then continued doing some work on the Backsplash. So without further ado, here is the Backsplash install video. A couple years ago we did repaint, so I did remove the old Backsplash, which was just like an extension of the countertop here, 4-inch high. I just pulled that off and then we painted, but we never installed the Backsplash because we tried painting the countertops and we wanted to find something that matched the countertop color. That didn't even last a year, even though I followed the instructions. It was a kit from Home Depot or online, I forget. But there was a way to paint the countertops to make them look like marble, and it failed. So I'm going to loosen things up and then start installing the Backsplash now. I just started taking off these cover plates here on the outlets and switches. This one I already replaced back when we painted, so we could have some USB chargers. And I'll be doing the same thing with this outlet, changing things over to black outlets and switches with the metal cover plates. So I'm taking all those covers off right now to get ready to clean the wall, and then I'll start marking my lines for where I want the Backsplash to go. And this is the Backsplash here. I do something similar on another job, and I thought this was perfect to match our color scheme here. It's going to be darker countertops with the stainless appliances that have black in them. So we're going with the stainless and black look, and this has stainless in it as well as like a marble look. And this is literally just plastic. Home Depot sells something similar to this, and that's where I got the original Backsplash that I already installed on another job. And then I shopped around and found on Amazon, of course, the very same exact thing is almost 50% less than at Home Depot, and it is peel and stick. So you just peel this backing off, and there's like a flexible, thin, like rubbery coating that's adhesive, and you literally just stick it on your wall. Alright, the wall's all clean, and now the next step, marking where you want to put your Backsplash, is going to be different for everybody. I like to add trim around my Backsplash, so some people I noticed in pictures and examples of stuff that I've seen, some people with this type of Backsplash, they'll actually install it below the top edge of the countertop, and then the countertop butts up against it, and there's literally no trim. They might put a little bead of clear caulk across there for sealant, but I like to add trim just to make a clean edge. Basically, I have to mark where the Backsplash is going to be installed, so I leave enough room for the trim to fit in, because there is no trim designed for this type of Backsplash. So I bought trim that you have to customize, and again, that'll be in a little bit. I'll show you what I have to do with the trim, but I have to mark where this Backsplash is going to go, draw level lines, and then leave some space for the trim to fit in after. So here's the Backsplash up against the countertop, and like I said, some people will move this countertop and actually slide this down below slightly to make a clean edge, but I will be adding trim. I don't want this down below the surface of the counter, so I will have to, this is a 12 by 12 panel, and I was just going to butt up against this trim here for the top, so we're going to have to cut the Backsplash, and as you can see, it folds fairly easily. So in between each row of this material here, you can just run a razor knife and cut it apart however you want. So we're going to take some measurements and see how it's going to fit. Alright, I do have a piece of plywood here as a cutting board, just so I don't score through into the countertop. Even though that's old junk countertop, I don't want to cut it up, but I already ran the blade down the center here, so we cut this apart, and then this will fit perfectly in there. And I'm basically going to center it between the countertop and that edging and leave a little gap. top and bottom, and that will allow the trim to slide in both across the top and the bottom. And the piece that you cut off, you do want to save, because you will find you need to add pieces here and there, typically across the top of larger areas, because it's not going to fill it, and then you'll need small rows to fill in up above as you install in those bigger areas. So we are going to set this aside, and now because we're going to come straight up off the top, or off this corner here, the countertop, we need to cut off these nubs. So you just take a straight edge and line up the edges of the innermost rows, so you can cut these extras off to make a straight edge up here. And then obviously when we go to put it in, we're going to set it back a little bit so that the trim is what matches up with that corner there and goes straight up. Alright, marked our line down the edge here. Now, you don't have to be 100% precise with this, but you just lightly score it a couple of times to get your edge started. And then you start pressing a little harder, and there you go. That little piece just comes off. And these, you can choose to save them or throw them away. I basically save everything until the very end to be sure that I have all the little pieces I need. You may need little pieces like this to fit in around the outlets and things, so it's best to hold on to everything. But we're going to finish cutting the rest, and this backsplash material is just plastic. It looks marble and metal, but it's just plastic, so we may need a jigsaw to cut shapes out to frame around outlets and things, but we'll see if that's even needed, because this seems to be cutting very easy with just a couple of passes. And there you go. Now you have a clean straight edge to go down the side and meet up with your countertop. Alright, we got our line marked, if you can see that, for the top edge of the backsplash. Now there is two lines. I'm following the upper line. The lower line was a mistake, so always check your work, especially with this backsplash. This is super sticky. I learned from the other job that once it's down, and if you remove a piece, you're going to be scraping the wall and using some kind of adhesive remover and everything else. It's a pain in the butt, so try not to make mistakes. So prep work is critical. I did learn the hard way, because I had followed the countertop line, and the original countertop was not level, so that created a couple of pinch points, and there is creative ways to get around that, but in this video I hope to strive for perfection. So now we're ready to install the first piece of backsplash, and you want to, like I said, peel this white backing off, and the black is the super sticky soft adhesive. And align your top edge level, and then make sure you're set back off the countertop edge a little bit, like I said, to allow space for that trim. And that's aligned across the top. It's a little hairy sometimes, but that piece is done. So now we got that first piece on. It's set back a little bit from that edge so the trim will line up even with that. And we've got a nice even gap across the top and across the bottom to slide the trim in onto the next piece. So basically the next piece, you're going to be cutting at the same height to match up with this though. So you got to make sure your puzzle pieces align and you're cutting the right row off to be able to match up with that pattern. And then this one's automatically going to hit this outlet. So we will show how that gets cut into. So what you want to do to cut in that outlet box is basically what I do is take measurements from a point of here over, so you know how far over to come, and you do want these little tabs here to overlap the material so that the outlet sits flush on top of the backsplash, so that your cover plate sits the way that it's supposed to. You don't want to put your backsplash over these ears. So you measure over from one point to the edge of the box so that this tab is overlapping, and then from that same point measure over this direction as well, so you have two measurements that way. And then for the top, you measure from the top edge here down to the edge there. So it's pretty much in line with this, so I have a feeling we're going to be able to cut just part of this off. So you already have your seam here in the new piece that will align right with that. So we're going to start measuring and cutting. Alright, we marked the new piece, and this is the edge that's going to match up with where I measured from. So from here over it is 1 5/8, and then from here to there is 5 5/16. And I double checked measurements and they are good. And then when I checked how far down to measure, it literally lines up evenly with that row and this row. So we're taking 3 sections of rows out. So now we're going to carefully cut these lines like we did those edges. And this is the part where the other backsplash job I did, I actually used a jigsaw. And those outlets were different, so I was cutting through an entire top also, not like an inner square. So I was able to just run the jigsaw straight down from the top edge to where I needed to. So I don't know that you could use the jigsaw effectively with these cuts, but it is an option. Also, this aluminum piece here is just a little piece of foil covering plastic, so that's not a solid piece of metal. So it is a little tougher to cut through, but you can still cut through it with a razor knife, as you see. Rectangle cut out. Alright, now we got that piece all lined up there, puzzle pieces snapped together, and that is dang near perfection. So you have your little ears on either side that will overlap this material, and you've got straight cuts. And you also, I noticed, as you're installing this, because there is flexibility, you have to watch for sag. So see that little bit of movement? This can actually drop from being level, and that'll cause a problem down at that end. So you want to make sure you're staying on your line, even if it creates little tiny gaps. So see how I move that? It actually opens that a tiny bit. If I want that top to stay in line, which it is right now, it is on the line, and you're not really seeing a gap. So if you do start seeing a gap, it's better to stay true across the top edge with being level than it is to hide gaps here, because later I'll show you what to do about those gaps. The next step is to pull these screws out and pull that outlet out. Now, I do not have the power shut off. There is live power back here. I feel safe working with it that way. So I am not shutting my breaker off in order to just loosen these and pull that out to get this piece in place and then put it back in. So, but if you are not experienced with electricity, shut your breakers off to the outlets that you're working around while you're installing the backsplash for safety, and then turn them back on once you have everything back secure. So I'm going to loosen these up now. Alright, that second piece is in place. Not much of gaps there, not very noticeable, and it is straight across the top, keeping level. So now you basically, like a puzzle, just keep piecing sections in all the way down to the next outlet and do the same thing, cutting around that one right to the edge. Alright, well, I only got 2 more pieces in place and I already ran into the next problem. So my countertops aren't even level. So from that side to this side, it gets bigger. It's about 8 7/8 measurement gap between the countertop and the edge of that molding, and down here it's like 9 1/16. So you can follow level all you want, and eventually you're going to run out of space. And I almost did already in this second piece I put in. This gap is getting smaller and smaller, and it's almost touching. Now, there's nothing you can do about that. Unfortunately, it's contractor BS, or they don't level things. Or maybe they do it on purpose. So if there is a spill, the water is running towards the sink and not the wall. You know, it could be that. I know the countertop that I worked on before this job, it was level the opposite way. So like it wasn't level to, you know, it wasn't basically running towards the sink, it was running away. So that wasn't true in that sense. So who knows why things aren't level, but I'm always someone who likes to level everything, and the contractors do not. So we are going to run into a pinch point where even though we're following this top line, we're going to have issues here. So basically I have to start trimming lengthwise across the bottom as well, continuing following level across the top so that we can fit those pieces in. And it is a little bit of a pain in the butt. I thought this was going to go easier than the last time, but of course it can't. Alright, so what I'm doing here to start getting away from the pinch point issue is the next piece I put on, I just trimmed the bottom edge to give me the gap that I need to continue the rest of the way. So we're following level across the top and then trimming the bottom to maintain gap down there. So this here, these two pieces behind the sink, I'm going to end up trimming, which, you know, you can just draw the line and cut it while it's on the wall, and that will peel off because it's very minimal adhesive right on the bottom edge. So we will just trim that after the fact, and everything will work out to be able to get the trim on. What I've done here is marked my edge. This matches up with the piece I just cut, and then this is how much gap I'd like. I just eyeballed it, so I know, since I've worked with the trim already, I know how much gap to leave without leaving too much. So, and that's not even a true level line either, because it is going to slowly change sizes as we go the rest of the way down that wall. So we just mark one end and then the other and draw a line, and then we'll trim that, see what it looks like. Alright, now the next piece does hit the outlet there a little bit, so we marked that. It was 9 1/4 from this point to the edge, and then because of things not being level, that outlet doesn't align with that edge best, so I am having to cut right there and then moving these three pieces here, and then we'll see how that looks. Alright, that last piece is in, and I did end up trimming across the bottom like the other pieces after cutting in the outlet, holding it back up, and then I, you know, made a line and cut across the bottom there. So that is it for that section of Backsplash. Alright, that wraps up the Backsplash install. Just a quick reference of how to use this peel and stick Backsplash. I will link down below where I got this from Amazon, because like I said, it's almost 50% cheaper than buying it from Home Depot. And you do notice a little bit of quality differences, but if that 50% savings is worth it to you, definitely try this. This came in pieces of 5 in a box wrapped up in like the bubble foam, so it's protected. Nothing has been damaged so far in all the boxes that I've opened up. So far the savings are a good deal for me. Alright, we're back, and it is time to do the trim work around the Backsplash. I don't like any seams around the sink, so what I do is put the first piece centered as much as possible. You don't have to get crazy and measure it, but that keeps the seams away from the water area, so if water sits here, it's not going to leach into any seams or anything. This trim, like I said earlier, is not designed for this type of Backsplash. It's easier to show from this end. Well, this trim is called J trim. As you can see from this end, it's looks like a letter J, but it used to have a backing piece that actually extended further up than this piece, so that this was the short end of the J, and then the backing piece extended up higher. I found a piece of hidden small piece of trim that I did not cut yet, so that's what the J trim looks like before I cut and after. So there's the two pieces, and I cut this big black back piece off and save the silver front, just like that. That was because thinner backsplash would actually lay over top and overlap the backing of the J channel, or the J trim. This backsplash material is too thick. As you can see here, it keeps wanting to focus on my hands, but that backing material doesn't slide behind there. So it basically, I tried to install it that way first, the last job that I did, and it basically pushed this front piece forward, so it made it look weird, and I don't like that, so it didn't meet my standard. So what I did to solve that problem was I took a Dremel and sliced the backing piece of this channel all down lengthwise. And now what I do, and the reason I left those gaps around the top, bottom, and sides of the backsplash is I just lay this in like that. And that serves its purpose and matches the backsplash wonderfully. So I basically take liquid nails and glue this into place. So that is what the liquid nails looks like. You just glob a little dabs along the inside there, and then center it behind the sink first. And that's what it's going to look like in place. Now, you're going to see some adhesive push out in certain spots depending on how heavy you put it, but you just take a wet cloth and wipe that off before you put the tape on. Alright, we ran the tape across that to hold it in place until it sets overnight, and we're going to add the next pieces. So you basically just butt up the next piece against there, run it to the edge, and I'll show you how I cut these corners when we get to that point. Alright, this is how I cut corners. So I cut this piece to fit back in here like so, and then this bottom piece comes in to match up with it. So I basically just take a notch out to overlap this nicely, just like so. So it sits a little more flush. And you're not going to see that bottom edge because it's in the corner. So we're going to glue and tape these pieces in and keep moving along, just like so. So that matches up flush with that piece, and that overlaps down there like that. And then I have another piece already cut right here that's going to fit in to that corner on that, going that way. Alright, we got that corner all buttoned up, and the trim here extended past the top of that outlet cover there. So I just took the cover off and ran it behind it. It's not thick at all, you can't even see a gap. So that's actually helping to hold that into place while it sets. And I overdo the tape. You might have to tape every single square millimeter of the trim, but I do because I just don't want anything coming loose. So we got down to the end here. I put this end piece on. So you want to find a piece of your trim that you've cut very clean looking, because people will see the edge of that backsplash there. So I found the nicest looking piece, cut that in. You want your end cap here the full length, and then overlap like we did over at that other corner, because you want to be able to see this clean edge. You don't want to cut this to overlap the other way, or else you'll see the gap here. And I'm wrapped up this end here, taped everything tight so nothing has movement, so that liquid nails can cure. And I did run out of long pieces. I just kind of guessed, and I knew I was going to have to order more. And one long piece will fit just about that whole length there, so I don't want to piece in little seams if I don't have to. So the small pieces I'll save for going behind the oven where we're not going to see seams, and then I'm going to need 2 short pieces in that corner and 1 short piece on this end. So that's going to wrap up tonight's little part of this. Like I said, I'm going to order the rest of the trim, and then when that comes in, I'm just going to button up over here, but I don't think I need to show that. Pretty much, you know, tomorrow morning I will pull this tape off and reveal what it looks like, obviously with everything cured and set, and wrap up the video. Alright, we pulled off the tape of the trim work that we did last night, and everything looks really good. Alright, I'm going to show you how to seal some of the cracks real quick, the gaps that you might get when you're putting the backsplash on and keeping it level, and some of them don't quite line up, the puzzle pieces of it, so you want to get some adhesive caulk like this, and depending on the color of backsplash you're going to use, you would want to match this. So if you have some tans in your backsplash, maybe get some almond color or tannish color caulk. But since we have a lot of white in our backsplash, I'm just using the good old white. And I already did fill some, but here's a little area right here where there's a couple of gaps between these, and we can make them look a little bit better. All right, this is very simple. You want to take your tube of caulk adhesive here and just push it into whatever cracks you're trying to fill. And there's going to be excess. We're going to wipe that off in a second. I don't really want to fill too many of them, but you also have a wet rag handy, and I always just wet my finger on the rag a little bit and then wipe it right off, and that fills all your little gaps and crevices. And you know, the style of this is supposed to look like tile, so you don't want to fill them all. You just want to fill the biggest ones, really, to get the look, you know, so you don't notice any huge gaps. But that is how you fill the gaps to make it look just a little bit better. Alright, that's going to wrap up the backsplash installation part of this project. Stay tuned for the next video, because that's going to be the countertops and the sink installation. So subscribe below to follow along for more videos of home repairs. And remember, time is everything, money is a tool, and you can't afford to waste either one. Until next time, last tag.